Hello and welcome to Between Two Perms. I'm your host, Alex Jenkins. Today on the show, we're going to be talking to one of Perth's best known sports presenters and commentators. He worked with Channel 10 for 31 years. He started and co-presented the Western Front, Perth's only football show that focused on WA's two AFL teams as well as the Waffle, had a successful career as a football coach, is an auctioneer, has presented on multiple radio shows and is still currently presenting for SEN, Spirit and Bunbury. He's also a Pisces. My guest is Mr. Tim Gossage.
The Pisces bit's important.
It is.
Good to be here, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Tim, so in one of your Twitter tweets, I guess you would say.
Was it a rant?
No, it wasn't a rant. It was when you announced your departure from 10. Mm-hmm. You said, "It's official. I'm leaving 10 News Perth in a month. It's been the best 31 years and I depart having had the best time. I grew up wanting to talk sport and I was lucky enough to get paid for it. I leave sad but not bitter. Much love, everyone past and present at 10. Best job ever." Now in that, you touched on saying that you grew up wanting to talk sport. So tell us about your childhood.
Oh, I grew up playing sport in the backyard with my brothers at Mum and Dad's house, who live still there in the family home. 4 houses down the road from where I live now, so the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Convenient for babysitting.
Very true. The bottom line is, I would play backyard cricket. I would bat. I would bowl. I'd keep the scorebook. I would go inside. I would get my sister's typewriter, which in those days was ribbon to ribbon. I would type out the match report. I would grab a hairbrush from Mum's hairbrush box. I'd grab a tie from Dad's clothing rack, and I'd stand in front of a mirror and I would present sport. That's what I did. That's what I did as a 10, 11, 12-year-old.
To an audience of one.
Yeah, but a good audience, very captive audience.
At least you only got positive feedback, I suppose.
Not all the time. So look, absolutely, and lived the childhood dream until they showed me the door.
So as a kid, you were competitive. I know you were apparently a Wembley B grade football champion.
D grade.
Oh, D grade. Sorry,
yeah, which was our B grade, to be honest.
Okay.
Kicked the winning goal in the 1989 D grade premiership,
Yep.
which a lot of people would know that story. I mean, it's part of footy folklore. I kicked the goal just before half time, and we didn't kick a goal after half time, and we won by 4 points. So you do the sums, Alex. If I don't kick the goal, we lose by 2 points.
Yeah.
So D grade premiership stars, how I like to, childhood dream stuff, yeah. Winning goal premiership.
So you were obviously have been competitive as a kid, all growing up. Mm-hmm. And then how did that get you into journalism?
Just always liked it. I wrote a book called The Sheriff's Dilemma at primary school. We all had to write a book, and I got it. My dad wrote the cover for me. My mum put the binding together. I typed out the book. I always liked telling stories. I liked telling news. I liked being in the drama. I liked being, I just liked acting. I liked dressing up and doing the dress-ups with my sister and stuff like that when we were growing up. So I liked the thrill of performing. And I suppose I love sport. Yeah. You love sport, you perform, you put them all together, you mash them all together, and it became TV. And I wanted to do what I ended up doing throughout my childhood. I was incredibly lucky, and my parents gave me that opportunity. I love sport. I didn't want to be a television news guy and do courts or police rounds or politics. I wanted to do sport, and the cards fell my way.
So now you just brushed on you didn't want to do television news and stuff like that. Did you have any preference between television or radio? Or was it as long as it was to do with sport?
No, it was TV. It was TV. I mean, you don't get these looks, and not, they don't, you go to waste looking like this.
I feel a bit embarrassed sitting here next to you.
The silver fox has got you covered, mate. Look, bottom line is, when I was a journo, I did my cadetship those days, and in those days, cadetships there was plenty of the opportunity. So basically an apprenticeship. We had the Daily News, the West Australian, the Western Mail, the Weekend News, the Sunday Times, the Sunday Independent, the Countryman, heaps of opportunities around, radio stations. They took uni graduates, they took in-house employment through the West Australian Daily News at the time. So there were huge opportunities. TV wasn't on our radar, and when I started out, Channel 10 wasn't on the radar. It was 7, 9 and 2. Didn't even think about it. Didn't think about radio. I wanted to do TV. I was writing, I was a newspaper, print journo, online, basically an AAP Reuters journo, and the phone call rang from Ian Brayshaw, and he said, "Would you like to come and try and work on weekends?" and write some scripts for us at Channel 10. Channel 10 was in Atco Huts at the time out at Dianella. They didn't even have a permanent base. And I loved it. I loved the thrill of writing to a minute 10 because that's what you have to write to. That's your standard length story. Had the strange voice, still got it. Not exactly Brad Pitt or George Clooney. Wore glasses and was basically told probably wouldn't get on TV full time, but happy to work you into the system somewhere. 31 years later, I was still doing it.
And loving it.
Loved it.
Now you said when you joined Channel 10, August 10th, 1999?
89.
89, sorry.
Yeah, that was my first casual shift.
Yeah.
And became a permanent employee about 6 months later. Yeah, so lucky. Ian Brayshaw, I'm indebted to. He mentored me in my early days. I went to Melbourne 94, 95 for a couple of years. Eddie Maguire took the footy show concept to Channel 10. They didn't like it, fancy that. Channel 9 liked it. He left Channel 10, but he had to find a replacement. So he rang and said, if you come here, I can go there. And best 2 years, 94, 95 in Melbourne. I loved every minute of it. Came back, was basically working in the sports department under Ian Brayshaw, and then Sticks retired and I took the job and was there till I was shown the door.
Yeah, only a month, or not even a month ago.
Yeah, 5 weeks ago. Yeah. 5 weeks ago.
Now, you got Western Front up and running in 2002. The first and only WA show running broadcasts in WA. It stopped going to air in 2011, but you stepped down in 2010. Why?
I can say this now. I just felt it had run its race. I felt that 10 years was a good run. I also felt that Channel 10 didn't have the rights any longer, so it was hard to place it. And I felt it was important to give Lockie, who was my wingman, my 2IC, we'll call him what you like, that opportunity of doing the show himself, and he did. The format changed slightly, and I had a sort of cameo roll through it, but he did it slightly differently. But I felt the actual impact of the show had run its race. I wasn't against it continuing, but I felt there's a time to get out, and I felt that was the time to get out. But we had a great time. 270 odd episodes or whatever we had. It was a great thing, and it was a legacy that probably, believe it or not, 31 years of being on TV, being on radio, being around. It's probably the Western Front. It's the one thing that people recognise you by the most, which I'm very proud of, and proud of Lockie's efforts and the whole. It was done on a smell of an oily rag. It was done on a shoestring budget. It was done in house. It was half-hour film, became an hour in parts. Huge. I mean, that just stuck. That was huge. And
you still get that?
I get that a lot. Probably doesn't have anything to do with the Western Front, but anyway, you know what I mean. But at the same time, I'm very, very proud of being involved in that, and proud that I came up with the concept. Didn't come up with that, but I came up with the concept.
Good. Now, speaking of the Western Front, I was told that you were the reason that Freo have such a tight media team due to a little stunt involving Ryan Crowley and Reece Palmer. Can you run us through?
Yeah, I can, sort of. So what happened was Reece Palmer was our man inside the Eagle, Fremantle. And I can't remember who was the Eagle at the time, but I gave a punter was involved. We had a whole range of guys at various times. But Reece was injured, and he went and did an interview with Ryan Crowley, who was injured.
Yeah.
And we thought it was a good idea that they'd have a crutches race along the foreshore down in the south of the river.
I mean, it makes sense. Two highly played sports stars.
High profile, highly paid.
Injured.
Serious long-term injuries, having a crutches race. We thought it was cool.
What could be the worst that happened?
Well, what happened was they got absolutely smashed by management. We got smashed by management. And yes, the free reign of handling the players at Fremantle was curtailed somewhat from that day onwards. But Crowley, ripping fella. Reece Palmer, ripping fella. And we got some good TV out of it. But things changed pretty quickly after that.
Now, while you were presenting sport, doing the Western Front, doing radio, in 2007, you were appointed the head coach of the Subiaco Colts. Did you have a spare few minutes or something? You were a bit bored? Were you what was the thought process behind that?
The thought process was I was helping out Scotty Waters, who was the Colts coach at Subi at the time. Marshall Taylor, who's a long-time cameraman in WA, he was another assistant coach as well, and a guy called Shane Beaumont, who is a real estate salesman. So we had this eclectic mix of blokes. So Scotty wanted me as his assistant. Scotty then got the league job. I knew how Scotty worked. Scotty wanted someone who'd worked under him, so we just moved up. He went up to the league. I stayed and took over the Colts, and I loved it. It was 2 years. I had such a good crew. It was such a good time. I think I developed as a leader, as a mentor. I think it helped me in life. I think it helped me in professional, in TV, leading people. Had a lot of good talent underneath me. We made the finals for the first time in 10 or 11 years in that year. 5 or 6 kids got drafted. Daniel Rich is one of my boys. Taught him everything I knew. And a few others as well. So, look, to be honest...
a couple of winning goals, has he?
No, he didn't quite reach the heights of myself anyway. But the bottom line is it was on top of, so I would read sport, and we were at Dianella, and we trained in Mount Hawthorn. I would read sport, and I would have shorts and runners on, and the tie and the jacket. So as that mystery surrounds what happens below the waist, I basically would say good night. I would get out, drive. I would literally be there 5 minutes later. They were doing their warm-ups. I would basically wipe my makeup off, put my Subiaco training shirt on and blow the whistle, and I was coaching a footy team in the Waffle Colts 8 minutes after coming off air. Yeah, so you're right. Didn't have much spare time.
No,
had to move quick.
Time consuming, but took
sleeping's
advantage
cheating.
Yep, okay, fair enough.
Yep.
I believe it was Arnold Schwarzenegger actually that said you should be sleeping 6 hours a night, and if you're not, sleep faster.
Well, I struggle to get 6 hours.
There you
Full
go.
stop.
Now, as you said, you got the team in the finals for the first time in 10 or so years.
Yep.
How's that as a feeling?
That was huge. And the thing was, I took the whole group to breakfast on the Saturday morning. So we trained and we went to a breakfast, and the final was on a Sunday. It was against South Fremantle, and I bought them breakfast out of my own pocket. And it was in Leederville, so we were at Leederville Oval. We trained, had a small run, get together, bought them breakfast, and played the next day. And we lost by 76 points.
Heavy breakfast.
Heavy breakfast, expensive breakfast, and bad result. But it was fun. It was so much fun. And some of those kids that played in that team, I'm still friends with going forward, and I'm indebted to them. They kept me young. There was so much. It just really was a great time. I was very privileged to coach them, to see some of them go on. Lots of them went on and played league footy, and 5 or 6 went on and played AFL footy. So, it was good fun. And as I said, I hang my hat on Daniel Rich. I don't think I taught him anything, but I think he taught me more as a 17-year-old. Great experience and very lucky.
Now, talking about you saying time, time, sleeping, cheating, all that sort of stuff. In 2009, a couple of years ahead of that, you were hosting or emceeing an event at Crown, had a spill. Yep. And injured yourself quite badly, actually. Do you want to give us a rundown?
Do I remember it? That's a good question. It was actually a rehearsal. So it was in the afternoon, and I was hosting an event, and it was for a mining company, and it was Phantom of the Opera. It was a Phantom of the Opera theme. And I was to walk up this second set of stairs, walk up, have a mask on, come up underneath these dancers with feather boas or whatever, and they would reveal, and yes, Tim Gossage, whoopie-doo, I hated all that stuff. I hated rehearsal. I hated acting, theatre, all that sort of stuff. If it's not real, I struggle with it. Yep. So I was going up. I had the mask on. I went up these stairs, and the stairs buckled. They moved. I fell, and I ended up in Charlie's in ICU for 4 days, unconscious, fractured skull, bleeding on the brain. I was in a bad way for a while, and I was off work for a bit. So, scary time. More in particular for my family. And Channel 7 brought a camera, and I was carried out behind the curtain as though I'd been shot. Anyway, so that was cool. Channel 7, I don't think it ever went to air, but anyway, and they wrote about it in Inside Cover, and it was scary. But it was a strange event.
Not ideal, like you say, fractured skull, blood clots.
Yep.
That's nothing light.
No, it wasn't light. I hit the floor hard, apparently. And when my sister came to the hospital, and she said, apparently I had no memory of this, and I went, how did I get here? I kept on asking my sister Melanie, how did I get here? And she said, by ambulance. I went, oh no, not ambulance. Like I was so embarrassed at the time, not ambulance. Anyway, so and I had no idea. I drove my car there at Crown. It was there for about 4 weeks. I didn't know where I'd parked it. I had no idea, had no recollection, and it took about several months before I started to get my faculties back. But yeah, scary at the time, and yeah, no after effects. Well, I don't think so.
It doesn't show, or you're hiding it really well. Now, you said you had a little bit of time off work. You're in ICU for 4 days.
Yep.
You went back to work 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Now, you had your wife, Bronwyn,
Yep.
stepson, Jack,
Yep.
and daughters, Elsie and Abby at
Yep.
home.
Yep.
How did they receive that, of you going back to work after having such a substantial injury?
Yeah. I think they, I think they were surprised I went back as quick as I did. I think they were more surprised that I bought a horse while I was in hospital.
You remember it?
No. I got the bill and said, congratulations, you bought a quarter share and a horse. Apparently I'd signed and agreed. Apparently I had no recollection of that.
Good.
No idea. So that was an expensive hospital visit. No,
Insurance doesn't cover that one,
No, it does
unfortunately,
not. And the horse was not much chop. But interesting enough, they were incredibly supportive, but I needed to get back on the horse. I needed to get back to work. That's where I was. And yeah, I think I went back too quick. I think it was several months before I really should have gone back. A lot of people were surprised I went back as quick as I did, but I've got to pay the bills.
It's true. I mean, yeah. Well, would that have been? Is that a workplace injury then, technically?
I can't go into the legalities of it, Alex, but there was some after conversation had. I swim in that after conversation, and I look at the limestone wall around the house in that conversation, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Yes, there was a settlement.
Okay. Now, fast forward to this year.
Yep.
Just over a month ago, 5 weeks ago,
Yep.
10 announced that you and dozens of others were getting laid off,
Yep.
not just in Perth, but around the country.
Yep.
How did you find out? Tell us how you found out, how you told these news.
I got a phone call from the East, from the network news boss, and I didn't see it coming. It was just after 9 o'clock, and he rang and said, it's a phone call I don't want to make. And I'm thinking, yeah, what have I done? Who have I upset? I'm thinking, and he said, it's not just you. This phone call is being made to a lot of other people. And I don't think there's any way to sack someone, but it blew me away. I was at home, my daughter Abby was there, and I hung up, and she walked past, and I said, Abby? And she went, yes, and Abby's 20. I said, Dad's been sacked. And she didn't believe it. I rang my wife, I rang my mum and dad, and then I went to work, and no one knew, apart from the two bosses.
Were you told to keep that a secret at the time, or was it just a personal choice?
I think the execution was swift for the presenters. Myself, Monica and Schultze, we all got the phone call. And there was a real numbness, to be honest, because we didn't see it coming. And I'll say to this day, I was at the top of my game. I was happy. I thought we were rating well. The group was working incredibly hard. We were doing a 90-minute news, still are, they are. And I did not see it coming. And I was staggered that it was coming to an end. And that last month, because they said I could go, and I wanted not to be there, but I sat down at the table and I was incredibly upset at home. Not publicly, I was okay, I was dealing with it. And Abby said to me, Dad, if it's the last genuine bulletin out of Perth for Channel 10, you need to be reading it because you deserve it. So she made me do it. And that was supported by the rest of the family, and I did. And glad I did, but it was hard. It was a really tough month, and still is. Still actually.
I was going to say, I can still see that.
Yeah, it hurts. Yeah, because I still should have had my job, and I think that newsroom required the leadership that maybe I provided. I don't care what anyone says. I mentor, I care, I believe in local news, and I worry about its future, the way it's heading. I worry about that. And I think people in Perth identify with local presenters. And that's what makes Seven so strong, because they keep the same presenters, and they have always kept the same presenters. And I think people like that. They like the comfort of turning on their TV and seeing those same people. And it's not the same now. I barely watched a second of it, I must admit. But I know Narelda reads from Sydney, the weather guy's in Brisbane, and Lockie's reading from a green screen in Perth. That, I don't think, is a great blend, in my opinion. But there are so many good people there that I love them very much, and I only want them to continue to have success, and I want people to watch them, but at the same time it hurts me a lot.
Who was some of your favourites that you were presenting with?
This is going to come out of complete left field, but Monica Goss is as good a person as I've ever met in our game. And I knew nothing of Monica, except I knew she used to do Today Tonight. So Narelda left to go to Sydney. She went with her partner to go to Sydney. It fell into Monica's lap that a spot would come up at 10. The day she walked in to the day she walked out, she never missed one update, one bulletin, one session, cared about the group, cared about the news, incredible human, great reader, loved being on the set. I loved just going in there. It revitalised me. She's a gun. I mean, I loved NJ, Charmaine, Selena. I loved all that. But believe it or not, the last 9 months was as good a 9 months as I've had on television because of Monica Goss. She was an absolute gun. And a crying shame because I do think she's arguably the best news presenter in WA.
Does that add to the pain of leaving as well?
Yeah, because we were together. That's what I talked about at the top of our game. She was revitalised, after 30 years at Seven. That's the job came. I don't want to speak on all behalf of Mon, but it was it extended her TV life. I'm not saying she's finished now. I'm sure she's got a bit to give, but I can tell you now that extended her career. She loved it. She loved engaging the news. She loved mentoring the young, and it's a very young newsroom, incredibly young. And she was great to be around. Schultzy liked her being around, and let me tell you, if you can get Schultzy to smile, you're going well, right? But he loved Mon. I really started to warm to Schultzy, and I don't know, we just had something going on. There was just, Mon loves her sport. She loves the news. She sat through she never once got out of, when I would read sport, before, NJ, Narelda would read, throw to me and go off and do her own thing. And that's fine. There was no crime. You don't have to sit there and watch me present. That's not what I'm talking about. But Mon sat there, engaged in every story that went to air in sport. She laughed, we giggled. Every night I'd say to her, what's for dinner? We'd talk. And I don't know if you know this, but the fact is that when the stories are going to air, we don't often watch them. We actually talk. So that's what we did.
Any regrets? 31 years is a long time.
Yeah. No. I gave it my best. Look, there's times when I can be a difficult person to work with. I don't tolerate laziness at all. I love people to work hard, aim for the best. Aim for the best story all the time. Aim for being credible. Credibility is so important in our industry. Headline second. Guts of a story first. That's all my advice to any youngsters coming through the game. Work on the content. Make sure your content's real. In TV, we're picture driven, number one. We're nat sound driven. So I think I coached that well. I probably handled some situations badly, to be honest. But I walk away with my head held high. I'd like to clarify. I'm not retired. I still reckon I've got some life left in me, in whatever form that may be. But no regrets. Very loyal. 31 years. You don't work somewhere for 31 years, and loyalty's not part of your MO. So I leave having given it my best shot, but I leave sad. I'm still very sad about it. I'm sad.
Highlights then.
So many. 2005 grand final, MCG. Eagles lost to Sydney, if you remember. Leo Barry, you star. I walked out on the ground at quarter time to the huddle at quarter time, to the John Worsfold huddle in that grand final, 2005, and I genuinely stopped. I stopped walking about 50 metres from where he was talking, and I stopped and I looked around. I did a full circle, and I thought to myself, the boy in the backyard at mum and dad's house is standing on the MCG on grand final day, and hundreds of people, millions of people, thousands of people around, not only Australia, around the world, are tuned into the biggest sporting event in Australia, and one of the world's biggest events, and you had a role to play. So that was huge. Look, I did a Commonwealth Games. Did Commonwealth Games, which I loved in Glasgow, which I was very lucky to do. Just jobs, just reading sport. and watching people progress. You know, I've got Lockie worked under me for 20 years. Probably my biggest, the talent's moved on, is Katie Price, who came through and worked with me and is now in Melbourne and doing great things in Melbourne, has a role in the Melbourne Cup, reads sport, got a real prominent role, and I sort of mentored her through her journey. I look at those type of people and youngsters that I've mentored through the way, that I feel like that's probably the legacy, and that's probably the highlight, just watching the growth of some of the young kids.
I was just talking to someone earlier, and you mentioned the 2005 Grand Final. I was told to ask you about the 2006 Grand Final when you were having a conversation with someone about their post-game celebrations.
Yeah, okay. So
quite an infamous, famous,
but
he
is.
still holds his own.
And can I just say this? One of the best people I've met in footy, and we talk of Ben.
Ben Cousins.
Yeah.
We're talking Ben Cousins.
One of the best people I've met in footy. Always said hello, always stopped for a photo, always had a chat, always great with the fans. The siren went, I'm on the ground, I'm running around doing the interviews, and previous year I wasn't required because West Coast lost. So Neil Cordy and Christy Malthouse did all the Sydney Swans interviews. So when West Coast won, I thought, this is my time. So there I am doing interviews with Chad Fletcher and Beau Waters and whoever they were, and Stephen Armstrong's on my back. And I'm piggybacking as I'm trying to interview Stephen Armstrong, who kicked one of the goals in the last quarter. Daniel Chick did a great goal. Adam Hunter was involved. And I got to Cuzzy. And I said to him, great result. Oh, it's fantastic, blah, blah. I said, what's the celebration going to be like? And his famous words were, it will be frightening. And that was probably one of the great statements of all time, and it was frightening. He partied hard. He partied hard. And I did the actual welcome back to Subi Oval the next day. I flew back that morning, went straight to Subi Oval, and I don't think we found Ben. I don't think Ben was there, but he partied hard, and we know what's happened since, and I'm sad by that. But at the same time, he gave everything for West Coast, and he was awesome. But yes, the old frightening party line, something I'll always remember in 2006.
Actually, any made-up stories that you got a good run? I know of a certain NBA basketballer.
Yeah. So what happened was, we didn't have a lead story, and I think Andrew Vlahov and Luke Longley and Mac Hall, real estate Mac Hall, owned the Wildcats at the time, and we were just looking for a lead story. So we rang Vlahov, Lockie and I, and he said, "We got anything for us?" And he went, "Oh yeah, Dennis Rodman's going to come and play for the Wildcats because he's linked with the Chicago Bulls with Luke." So we went with it. We interviewed him. Yeah, we're in the talk. It was never going to happen. It was never going to happen, and never did happen. So we did make that up. Probably a little bit unprofessional, to be brutally honest with you, but
good credibility though.
Yeah, it kept us in sweet with the Wildcats. Kept Lockie, the best courtside announcer in the business. So kept Lockie sweet with them all. So yeah, that, as far as a made-up story was concerned, there were a few elements to it, but yes, I was a party to it. Probably shouldn't have gone with it, but we had a bit of fun. Got people talking, and I think it was written. I think the West followed us the next day. They went with used the quotes, which is always good when the West Australian uses the quotes out of a story that you ran on the news. It's always a feather in your cap. Tick that box.
Now, not many people would probably know this, but you're an auctioneer. How does someone get into that?
They talk fast. So I was doing corporate auctioneering and sports nights and fundraisers, Ronald McDonald Ball, juvenile diabetes, whole range, Fragile X, which I love, as a charity. So many, and I just gift of the gab. Oh, all done, sold, bang. Anyway, I did a function, and a bloke walked up. He said, "Have you ever done real estate auctioning?" I said, "Oh no, a bit too frightening." Anyway, I went and got my licence, official licence, and registered. And for the last 18 months, I've been selling houses.
Enjoying it?
Oh, it is so cool. It is so cool. So I've just signed with a company called The Agency, and I'm sort of exclusive to them, doing residential. The thrill of the chase, to stand, to have a vendor, to have the sellers. So I use this very cheesy setup, right? I'm the conductor, you're my band, this is our stage, let's make some sweet music and entertain. Would that get you in?
So
So I'm the conductor.
Yeah.
The people who are buying and bidding,
Yeah.
they're my musicians,
Yep.
they're my audience, and that's the stage, which is the house I'm trying to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So all together, you don't get it. I thought it was good at the time. So I do love it. And when you pass the reserve, in the back of your mind, so I can vendor bid on behalf of to try and bring the price up, but you've got to declare that legally. So I can vendor bid, but you can't go above the reserve. So when you go, my very first auction was in Mount Lawley, not far from this very studio. I went above the reserve really quick. Well, mate, it is better than sex, let me tell you. It is so cool. When you pass the reserve and you just go, yeah, baby, and you just be a free spirit, and then you just sell the house and you sell it, and you're behalf of the vendor, and then you feel like you're ripping the seller off, the buyers off, because you've passed what they have to pay, but they keep going up. So there's a whole lot of elements to it. Love it. Best thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did.
It's a good challenge each time, I suppose.
Oh, it is a huge. And sometimes it's hard because you're doing an auction and you actually get no bidders, and that's tough. But that's the market we're in. Perth's very slow in regards to auctions. That's the only way you sell houses in Sydney and Melbourne is through an auction. In WA, we're way slow. So if you are planning to sell your house, do it by auction. I'm your man. I'm your man. Is that a free plug, was it?
Yeah.
Should I put my
I'm just thinking, if you
mobile
have
across the screen?
no bidders, then I guess that's very lonely sex, isn't it?
Don't know, Alex. Would you like to explain to the viewer?
Now,
That's actually very good for you. I didn't think you had a sense of humour.
thanks, mate. I appreciate it. As I mentioned in the intro, you are working for SEN Spirit in Bunbury.
Yes, not in Bunbury.
Is it not in Bunbury, but for Bunbury?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in my shed.
Basil Zemplis has now recently has won.
Did he win the Lord Mayor?
He did. Have you heard about it?
Did we have?
I don't know if you're being genuine or not.
Did we have the Lord Mayor vote? We've already had it.
He's won it, yeah.
Really?
There you go.
And he won.
He did.
How many people voted, Alex?
Probably Baz.
6,000 people, Alex.
There you go.
Anyone would think it was the US presidential election. Seriously. Was it not the greatest over-publicised event in the history of the world? Huge event, I get it, but really?
It's
Full-page ads they were taking out, Alex. It's only 6,000 people. I got more votes at the Roseley Primary School Council election back in 1973.
Maybe you should run for mayor next time.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Well done to Baz, though. He's a ripping fella. I love his passion, and he'll be great for Perth. I don't care what anyone says. Anyone puts their hand up to take on that gig, considering the muck they were in and the mess that place has been left in, hats off to Baz. Don't know where he's going to find the time. Oh, that's why he's left radio.
Yeah. So that leaves the seat open, doesn't it?
No, does it?
Well, you tell me. Would you or have you thrown your hat in the ring?
No, I don't throw hats in the ring, Alex.
Would you put your hand up? Had any phone calls? Give us an exclusive, Tim.
Have I had a phone call? Yes, I have. There's your exclusive. I have had a conversation with someone who I think will eventually make the decision.
From 9 or 6PR?
From the connection, yeah. Do I want to do it? I'm interested. Will it be that spot? No idea. What will it look like? No idea. Do I want to do... I'm happy where I am. I'm happy where I am. SEN Spirit Bunbury, if you're watching, Hutchie, I'm happy where I am, but I'm open to all offers. And I would love to do breakfast radio in Perth again, whether that be with 9 Radio, 6PR.
Anyone?
No, 9 Radio, 6
Yeah.
Give me a call. And I can auction your house at the same time.
There you go, beauty.
Yep.
Now, final question.
Oh, really?
Final question.
Okay.
Now, as I mentioned in the intro, you're a Pisces. They're known to be entertainers. Tim, do you consider yourself a singer?
No.
No? Then maybe if you just have a look at the screen up here, could you please explain this?
Copping death threats after the match. Now, the word is, when the heartthrob went down, the chant went up, get up, get out of my head and fall into my arms instead. That wasn't very good. That's the one direction that went was down.
Very bad. So now that
was not very bad.
That were your words.
Oh, I said very bad.
Yes.
One Direction. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Best concert I've ever been to.
really?
Best concert I've ever been to, One Direction. I took my girls there. They were like 3 or 4 rows from the front. I was in a corporate box because that's where you go to watch One Direction. And they entertained for 2.5 hours and loved every minute of it. And yes, I did sing. But I was Oliver Twist. Do you want me to sing Oliver Twist?
Mate, I would love to.
Where is love? Does it fall from skies above? Is it underneath the willow tree I've been dreaming of?
Perfect.
Yeah, no.
Well, Tim, on that note.
Oh, that bad note. Very good, Alex.
It was a note, nonetheless.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you for joining us on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks
Appreciate
for the
your
invite.
time.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Alex. I'm glad to be the first cab off the rank, mate, and all the very best with it.
That brings us to the end of the show. Thanks to Tim again for talking with us. Join me next week right here on Between Two Perms. I'm Alex Jenkins. Goodbye.
Nice work by you, mate. Have a scotch
Cheers, mate.
on me. Cheers.